Part 67. The battle begins. Narrating the exact details of a battle with hundreds of people can only be done by compiling individual narrations. The narrations are from surviving companions, as well as those who fought on the side of the Quraysh, but later accepted Islam. The difficulty arises when attempting to ascribe a chronological order to each narration. This challenge occurs throughout the Seerah, and the researcher is tasked with creating a chronological account from the available resources. As the Quraysh began charging towards the Muslims, the Prophet said to the companions, "Stand up and charge towards a paradise whose width is like the heavens and the earth." Umair ibn al-Humam scoffed, and when the Prophet asked him why he scoffed, he said,
"If this is true, regarding the width of one level of paradise equating the entirety of the heavens and earth, then what use is it to remain living on this earth? I want to be of those people."
The Prophet replied, "You are of them." Umair then threw away the dates in his hand and said, "If I live long enough to finish these dates, I would have lived too long of a life." He charged towards the enemy and met his martyrdom. As a military commander, the Prophet did not usually fight in battles, as he had the responsibility of directing the army, but he fought in Badr. He alternated between commanding the army, making dua, and physically fighting. Ali said,
"The Prophet was the closest to the enemy, fighting most aggressively, and when fighting grew fierce, we would seek protection through him."
Ali also narrated that when he came into the Prophet's tent, he found him making profuse dua and prostration.
"O ever-living, O all-sustaining, O ever-living, O all-sustaining."
Ali then went out to fight and later returned, finding the Prophet in prostration. He again left and later returned and found the Prophet still in prostration, and then Allah decreed victory for the Muslims. The fact that Ali narrated both these hadiths is the strongest indication that the Prophet alternated between fighting and making dua. Allah sent down 1,000 angels to reinforce the Muslims. As cited,
"When you cried out to your Lord for help, he answered, 'I will reinforce you with 1,000 angels, followed by many others.' Surah 8, verse 9.
The phrase reinforce you is used to translate mumidukum, because there is a distinction between help and reinforcement. To reinforce is to help an existing effort. The Muslims would raise their swords, while the angels would lower the enemy's swords, a subtle yet important distinction, and a lesson in tawakkul and reliance on Allah. The reinforcement only applies when the initial effort exists. Allah chose specific angels to attend Badr. Jibreel asked the Prophet,
"What do you think of those of you, that is humans, who participated in Badr?"
The Prophet said, "We think they are the best of us." Jibreel replied,
"We too think the same of those of us, that is angels, who attended Badr."
In reality, Allah did not need to send 1,000 angels when one single angel would have sufficed considering their supernatural existence. When Allah destroyed the people of Prophet Lut, Archangel Jibreel descended in his true form and slammed the ground with the tip of one of his 600 wings, destroying the entire city. The sending of 1,000 angels was a show of force to assure the Muslims of the divine support they had, as well as a message that said divine support only appears after the initial effort is made. Allah said to Maryam,
"And shake the trunk of this palm tree towards you. It will drop fresh, ripe dates upon you." Surah 19, verse 25.
The expectation was not that an exhausted, desperate, heavily pregnant lady can shake the firm trunk of a palm tree. Rather, the action was necessary, even if symbolic, for Allah to cause the fruit to drop. The angels arrived at Badr in full force, but only after the companions' unsheathed swords were ready to strike. Ibn Abbas narrates that a companion was in pursuit of a pagan when he heard the sound of a whip and a call,
"Go forth, Hazum!"
The companion then found the pagan killed before he was even able to strike. The Prophet said, "That was an angel that Allah sent down from the third heaven." Similarly, when Al-Abbas, a physically imposing warrior, was captured by a shorter, skinnier Ansari, he called out defiantly to the Prophet,
"This man did not capture me."
The Ansari insisted.
"No, I captured him."
Al-Abbas began looking around, searching for the one who captured him, saying,
"The man who captured me was the most handsome man on a beautiful black and white horse, but I cannot find him."
The Ansari continued to insist until the Prophet said, "Be quiet, for Allah helped you with a noble angel. Abdur Rahman ibn Auf narrated that he was hoping to fight alongside strong soldiers for extra support in battle. He looked to the right and left and was disappointed to see two small-framed adolescents, Mu'ad ibn Amr ibn al-Jamu and Mu'awid ibn al-Afra. The youth to the right poked him, leaned over and whispered,
Oh, uncle, do you know Abu Jahl?
Abdur Rahman ibn Auf replied that he of course did, and the youth replied,
I heard that he disrespected the Prophet, and I have made an oath to Allah that if I were to see him, we would not part until one of us is dead.
The youth to the left then poked him and asked the same question, for they were teenage friends, in competition to kill Abu Jahl to avenge the Prophet. Abdur Rahman ibn Auf then felt comforted by their valiance and spirit. When Abu Jahl was in sight, surrounded by his entourage, Abdur Rahman ibn Auf said to the boys, There is your man. As soon as he spoke, they both darted into the sea of fighting with one target in mind. They navigated through the throngs of people until they were in proximity, and Mu'ad leaped into the air, sword first, swinging downwards ferociously. The magnitude of the downward force sliced Abu Jahl's leg off completely, but Abu Jahl's son, Ikrimah, also swung, chopping off Mu'ad's entire arm. His arm dangled from his body by a thin piece of skin, and Mu'ad later remarked that it became burdensome, and so he placed the arm under his foot and ripped it off to continue fighting. As Ikrimah was turned towards Mu'ad, Mu'awid struck another blow to Abu Jahl. The two teenage warriors managed to escape the melee and returned to the Prophet shouting,
O Messenger of Allah, I killed Abu Jahl.
They began arguing with each other, both claiming the fatal blow, until the Prophet said, You both killed Abu Jahl together. After the battle ended, the Prophet ordered the companions to find Abu Jahl's body. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, one of Abu Jahl's main victims of torture and humiliation in Mecca, found him on the ground, breathing heavily, resisting the pangs of death. Ibn Mas'ud placed his foot on his chest and said,
Do you finally admit that Allah has disgraced you, O enemy of Allah?
Abu Jahl remained obstinate until his last moment alive, scoffing,
How have I been disgraced? I am a person killed by his own people.
Likely suffering delirium from blood loss, he then asked,
Who has won the battle?
And Ibn Mas'ud replied,
Allah and his messenger.
Referring to Ibn Mas'ud's foot on his chest, he then said,
You have stepped on a high place, O son of a shepherd.
It was to be his last sentence, as Ibn Mas'ud took Abu Jahl's own sword and sealed his demise. He then returned to the Prophet and said that he found the corpse of Abu Jahl. The Prophet responded, You swear by Allah. And Ibn Mas'ud did so 3 times. The Prophet then uttered the famous hadith, He was the pharaoh of this ummah. Umayyah ibn Khalaf was another enemy of Allah who met a humiliating demise. As mentioned, Umayyah desperately tried to avoid fighting at every opportunity. His desperate pleas continued until the very end. When he saw that the Quraysh had fled, he tried to bargain for his life. He saw Abdur Rahman ibn Auf, who was a close friend and business colleague pre-Islam, holding some armor as war booty. He desperately held on to him, pleading,
O Abdul-Ilah, what if I were to give you much more than this? I offer you many milking camels. Take me as a prisoner and I will give you whatever you want.
Abdur Rahman's name was originally Abd Amr, and when he converted, he changed it to Abdur Rahman, slave of the Most Merciful. Umayyah refused to call him Abdur Rahman, as the pagans did not believe in the concept of Al-Rahman, the Most Merciful. Instead, he offered to call him Abd Alillah, slave of God, and Abdur Rahman agreed, as its meaning was still Islamically sound. Abdur Rahman, a shrewd businessman even on the battlefield, took Umayyah up on his offer. He threw the armor and held Umayyah with one hand, and Umayyah's son with the other. However, Allah decreed that justice be served, and Umayyah experienced the timeless truth of, You reap what you sow, for none other than Bilal ibn Rabah walked past. Bilal saw Abdur Rahman holding Umayyah's hand and exclaimed,
Umayyah ibn Khalaf, the leader of Kufr, over my dead body.
Abdur Rahman tried to calm Bilal down and de-escalate, but Bilal only grew more infuriated with each attempt, repeating,
Umayyah ibn Khalaf, the leader of Kufr, over my dead body.
He then called over a group of the Ansar and said,
This is the man who tortured me.
Bilal's story was famous, and he represented the epitome of perseverance and unwavering patience in the face of unmitigated evil. Stories of the cries of Ahad, Ahad, one, motivated the Muhajirun and Ansar alike to keep fighting on. When Bilal identified Umayyah to them, the group of Ansar surrounded Abdur Rahman and began poking their swords past him to stab Umayyah and his son. Abdur Rahman continued to hold them back, trying to negotiate until his foot was wounded in the commotion, and Umayyah and his son were both killed. When they tried to bury him, they could not lift him, as his flesh was stuck to the rocks and pebbles on the ground. One cannot but help compare his fate to the burning rocks he would place on Bilal in Mecca. Abdur Rahman recalled in his old age, "May Allah have mercy on Bilal. Not only did he stop me from my ransom, I lost the armor too." A tragic incident at Badr was the case of Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah. His father, al-Jarrah, was a staunch pagan who had a distinct hate for Islam, to the extent that he hated his own son for embracing Islam. His hate was so severe that in the Battle of Badr, he specifically sought out Abu Ubaidah to fight and kill. Abu Ubaidah, on the other hand, tried his utmost to avoid his father throughout the day. Eventually, his father cornered him and pounced. Abu Ubaidah, in self-defense, held out his sword and killed him. Murmurs spread of Abu Ubaidah killing his own father, and deep sadness and shame overcame him. Allah then revealed,
"You will never find a people who truly believe in Allah and the Last Day, loyal to those who defy Allah and His Messenger, even if they were their parents, children, siblings, or extended family. For those believers, Allah has instilled faith in their hearts and strengthened them with the spirit of Him. He will admit them into gardens under which rivers flow to stay there forever. Allah is pleased with them, and they are pleased with Him. They are the party of Allah. Indeed, Allah's party is bound to succeed." Surah 58, verse 22.